when I packed my bags. At 18, my mom stopped me and asked, "Is this because we bought your brother a car?" I looked her in the eye and replied no, but because it doesn't matter whether I'm here or not. It was a regular Saturday morning, the kind where cartoons are blaring and you're munching on cereal right from the box. That was until Mom and Dad sat me down at the kitchen table. Their faces had that "we need to talk" look, which usually meant I was either in trouble or something weird was up. Turns out it was the latter. "We've been thinking a lot about this, and we feel it's the right time to tell you." Dad began clearing his throat like he was about to announce we were moving to Mars. Mom took over with a kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for surprise trips to the amusement park. "We've decided to adopt a child. You're going to have a little brother." Honestly, I didn't know whether to be excited or worried. I was 8, an only child, quite content with my stash of toys and undivided parental attention. "Why do we need another kid?" I asked, not trying to hide my confusion. Mom and Dad exchanged a look, one of those secret adult codes that scream, "He'll understand when he's older." "There are many children out there who need a loving family," Mom explained. "We have a lot of love to give, and we think it's a good thing to share that with a child who doesn't have what you do." It sounded noble when she put it like that, but all I heard was, I might have to share my room, my toys, and worse, my parents. 2 months later, enter Stephen. He was 7 a year younger than me, with this mop of curly hair and a shy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was from a rough background, foster homes and all that. The first few days he was as quiet as a mouse, tiptoeing around the house like he was walking on glass. But quiet didn't last long. It took Stephen about a week to start showing his true colors. He had this knack and almost genius way of manipulating Mom and Dad. He could turn tears on and off like a faucet, and somehow he always seemed to know exactly what to say to win them over. At first, I thought it was cool having a little brother. I tried to show him the ropes, how to sneak extra cookies, the best hiding spots for hide and seek, and even shared my favorite comics with him. But soon, it felt like he was the puppet master, and we were all dancing on his strings. His first masterstroke, the toys. My birthday rolled around, and I was stoked about the new bike I'd been hinting at for months. But when the day came, there was no bike. Instead, there was this fancy remote-controlled car for Stephen. Stephen has never had a real birthday party, or gifts like you've had, Dad explained when I asked. My 8-year-old brain couldn't comprehend it. Why did my birthday have to be about making Stephen happy? And that was just the start. Christmas came and the pattern continued. I got socks and books. Stephen got the latest video game console. I remember staring at the tree, feeling this knot in my stomach as Stephen tore through his gifts with glee. When I asked why Santa favored him, Mom pulled the "he's had it rough" card again. As the months rolled into years, this favoritism only got more blatant. Stephen was a natural at playing the victim, and my parents ate it up. If anything went wrong, somehow it was my fault, and Stephen was the injured party. The worst part? He knew exactly what he was doing. After every argument, once the parents were out of earshot, he'd shoot me this smug grin that made my blood boil. It wasn't just at home either. We'd go out, and it would always be about what Stephen wanted. My favorite place in the world was this local pizza joint. They had the best cheesy garlic bread and arcade games. But Stephen, he was all about McDonald's. I hated McDonald's, but guess where we ended up 9 times out of 10? Yep, under the Golden Arches. It was during one of these McDonald's trips that I first seriously thought about how unfair everything was. There I was picking at my nuggets while Stephen devoured a Big Mac like he owned the place. I remember thinking, this isn't right. Why am I the one who always has to give up what I want? My parents had an answer for everything, though. Stephen needs more attention because of his difficult childhood, they'd say. Or Stephen feels left out, and we need to make sure he feels part of the family. It was always some reason that made my feelings second tier. By the time my 16th birthday was on the horizon, I had a sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, things would be different. My parents had started talking about throwing a party at the pizza place. It sounded too good to be true, and it was. Leading up to the party, Stephen's moodiness hit new heights. He sulked and pouted, making everyone around him miserable. I tried to ignore him, focusing on the guest list and the menu, anything to keep my spirits up. But deep down, I had that nagging feeling. The feeling you get when you know the storm is coming, but you hope maybe it'll pass you by this time. Spoiler alert, it didn't. So that's the scene set me. A kid who just wanted to feel like he mattered to his own parents, and Stephen the mastermind always 2 steps ahead. It was a recipe for disaster. And as my 16th birthday proved, disaster was exactly what was on the menu. As the years dragged on, the dynamic in our house didn't get any better. If anything, it got worse. Stephen was growing into his role as the golden child, and I was well just there. It felt like I was just another piece of furniture, occasionally useful, mostly overlooked. Take any random Saturday. We'd all be sitting around deciding what to do. I'd throw out the idea of hitting the batting cages or maybe catching a movie, something we could all enjoy. But no, we'd end up at some kiddie park because Stephen had a sudden urge to ride the merry-go-round. And it wasn't just that he wanted to go, it was that my parents thought these little excursions were crucial for building his self-esteem or some other parenting buzzword. The favoritism wasn't subtle either. It was right there in your face every single day. Like this one time, I brought home a trophy from a school science fair. I was buzzing, couldn't wait to show mom and dad. I placed it proudly on the kitchen counter, waiting for them to come home. When they did, I got a quick, "That's nice, buddy," followed by a half-hour rave about how Steven had managed to score a goal in soccer practice. His goal wasn't even a game winner. It was just a goal during a regular practice session, but you would have thought he'd won the World Cup the way they went on about it. School events were a minefield too. Both my parents would always make sure to attend every single one of Steven's events, school plays, parent-teacher conferences, you name it. But when it came to my events, it was always, "Oh, we'll try to make it," which translated to, "Don't hold your breath." Most of the time, they didn't show. I remember looking out into the audience during my solo at the school concert and seeing those 2 empty chairs. It stung, man. It really did. Then there were the holidays, which were supposed to be happy times, right? Not in our house. Christmas was the worst. I remember one Christmas I had been eyeing this video game for months. I dropped enough hints that I might as well have taken out an ad in the newspaper. Come Christmas morning, I was like a coiled spring, ready to finally get my hands on that game. I tore through my gifts, but no game. Instead, I found clothes, some books, and a pair of socks. Classic. But Steven got the game, the exact game I wanted. When I asked Mom why Steven got the game and not me, she just said, "Oh, honey, you know how tough Steven has it. We wanted to give him something special." I wanted to scream, "What about me? Don't I deserve something special too?" It's not like I needed material things to be happy, but it was about feeling valued, feeling seen. And I just didn't. Every gift opening session felt like a slap in the face, a reminder that I was the second choice, the backup plan. And it wasn't just big things like holidays or events. The day-to-day stuff added up too. Like food, yeah, even what we ate. If Steven wanted pizza and I wanted burgers, we'd be eating pizza. If I wanted to watch a movie and Steven wanted to play video games, the TV was his. My wants and needs were always sidelined. It was like living in a twisted version of that old saying, "What's mine is yours and what's yours is yours." The resentment built up like layers of dust on old furniture. It was gradual, but undeniable. I started spending more time alone in my room, headphones on, just trying to block out the unfairness of it all. I grew quieter at dinner, spoke less about my day and my achievements because what was the point? They weren't really listening. Not unless it had something to do with Steven. Even my friends started to notice. They'd ask why I never invited them over anymore, or why I always seemed down. I'd shrug it off, not wanting to get into it. How do you explain that your family treats you like an afterthought without sounding like you're throwing a pity party for yourself? The worst part was I started to question if maybe there was something wrong with me. Why wasn't I good enough to warrant the same attention and love? I'd lie awake at night wrestling with these thoughts, feeling like maybe I just wasn't as lovable or as interesting as Steven. It was during one particularly low evening, right after another celebratory dinner for some minor achievement of Steven's, that I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I was up in my room, the sounds of their laughter drifting up from downstairs. They were probably toasting to Steven's mastery of some video game level or another. That night I started to plan. Plan not just idle daydreaming, but actual planning. How could I get out? What did I need to do to make a life for myself where I was the priority? It wasn't just about getting away from them. It was about finding a place where I could matter. By the time my 16th birthday rolled around, I was more than ready to see if they'd throw me the bone of acknowledgement, if they'd finally for once make it about me, even just for a day. But deep down, I knew better. I knew that hoping for change was like wishing for snow in July, unlikely and unrealistic. But a part of me, that little kid who still wanted his parents to see him, to love him, couldn't help but hope. My 16th birthday was supposed to be a turning point, a day just for me, celebrated at my favorite pizza place with all my friends. For once, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would be different. The week leading up to it, I was actually feeling a bit of that birthday excitement, like maybe this year wouldn't be a total bust. Mom and Dad had started making the right noises about the party a month in advance. They talked about booking the whole venue, which wasn't huge, but was perfect for what we needed. They even discussed the guest list with me, making sure no one was left out. It felt good planning something that was all about me for a change. I picked out the menu, extra cheesy pizzas, garlic knots, and of course, a giant lemon soda tower. Everything was set down to the arcade tokens for everyone. As the day got closer though, Steven started acting up. He was moodier than usual, quieter in some ways, but more explosive in others. It was like he couldn't stand the attention being on anyone but him. My parents, predictably, were more focused on calming him down than anything else. I noticed the shift the way conversations about my party would get sidelined because Steven had a bad day at school or didn't eat his lunch. Despite the warning signs, I held on to a sliver of hope. This was my 16th, a big one. And they had to know that, right? The day arrived and I woke up feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. I put on my favorite shirt, the one with the graphic of my favorite band, and headed downstairs. The house was buzzing, but not with birthday vibes. No, it was all about getting Steven ready. He had decided at the last minute that he wanted to come to the party, which wasn't the plan. Steven didn't even like pizza that much. He was all about burgers and fries. But there he was, getting fussed over like he was the guest of honor. By the time we got to the pizza place, I was already feeling a bit edged out. My friends started arriving and that helped. We jumped into games, the noise and chaos of the arcade drowning out my frustration for a while. It was great. We laughed, competed for high scores, and stuffed ourselves with slice after slice of pizza. Then came time for the cake. I had specifically asked for a vanilla cake with raspberry filling, my favorite. I was looking forward to that sweet end to a pretty good day. But as the staff brought out the cake, I saw it immediately. It wasn't vanilla. It was chocolate, dark rich chocolate, the kind Steven loved. Confusion turned to annoyance real fast. I watched as they set the cake down in front of me, candles flickering. The room sang happy birthday, but the words felt hollow. I turned to my parents, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. What's with the chocolate cake? You know I hate chocolate. Mom's face went through a series of emotions before settling on a forced smile. Well, honey, since Steven's birthday is next month and he loves chocolate, we thought we could celebrate a little for him too today. It's like a pre-birthday treat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. One day my birthday was suddenly about Steven again. I glanced at him, and there was that smug little smile, that look that said he'd won without even trying. I lost it. How dare you? I shouted, louder than I meant to. The room went quiet, all eyes on me. It's my birthday. Can I have just one day? One day that's about me without him stealing it? Steven's act kicked in full force. He put on a baffled face and looked innocently at our parents. But we talked about this, didn't we? You said it was okay. Why are you being so mean? I stared at him speechless. We hadn't talked at all. This was the first I'd heard about the chocolate cake scheme. Before I could say anything else, Dad stepped in, his voice stern enough. That's no way to talk at your birthday party. Apologize to your brother. That was the last straw. Apologize to him for what? For wanting my birthday to be my own. I didn't apologize. Instead, I turned and walked out of the pizza place. I could hear my friends muttering, my parents calling after me, but I didn't stop. I walked out into the parking lot, fuming, hurt, and utterly defeated. After a few minutes, my best friend Mark came out. He didn't say much, just stood with me, which I appreciated. We didn't go back inside. Instead, we talked about random stuff, anything but the disaster the day had turned into. Eventually, Mom came out, her face a mix of anger and worry. Come back inside, she said. Don't ruin your party over a silly cake. But it wasn't just about the cake, and it never had been. It was about every ignored wish, every second-place finish in my own home. I'm not going back in, I told her firmly. I'm done being second best in my own life. Mom didn't understand, or maybe she didn't want to. She left soon after, and Mark's mom came to pick us up. The ride home was quiet. The kind of silence that's heavy, filled with things left unsaid. That night, as I lay in bed, I made a decision. This was it. I needed out. I couldn't keep living in Steven's shadow, celebrating his victories and mourning my losses in silence. I needed a plan, a way to carve out a space where I could be the priority, where my birthdays would be about me, and my achievements wouldn't play second fiddle to anyone else's. So, I started planning in earnest this time. My escape was no longer a distant dream. It was a necessity, and I was going to make it happen no matter what. After the birthday disaster, I was more determined than ever to get out. Every day in that house felt like I was just taking up space, a placeholder, until the next Steven-related event. It was clear I needed to do something if I wanted any shot at a life where I was more than an afterthought. I started by getting more hours at the local grocery store where I'd been working part-time. The manager liked me well enough and was sympathetic when I explained I was saving up for college and needed any extra shifts I could get. Money was my ticket out, and I was going to earn every penny I needed to make my escape. Every shift I worked, every aisle I restocked, I was thinking about the future. It wasn't just about leaving. It was about building something new. I started looking at college's scholarships, anything that could get me farther away and give me a fresh start. The planning wasn't just about the logistics of moving out. It was about making sure I wouldn't have to come back. I started squirreling away money in a savings account my parents didn't know about. It wasn't much, but it was mine and it was hidden. I felt a bit like a spy sneaking around gathering intel and resources for my big break. In school, I buckled down on my studies. Grades had always come fairly easy to me. But now, I had a real purpose for maintaining high marks. Colleges wanted the best, and I was going to give them a reason to pick me. I met with my school counselor, Mrs. Henley, who was a godsend. She helped me navigate the maze of college applications and financial aid forms. You've got a bright future ahead of you, she'd say, and I clung to those words like a lifeline. I also started distancing myself from home life. I spent more time at the library or at friends' houses after school. Home was where the heartache was, and I couldn't handle any more heartache. My parents noticed, I think, but they didn't do much about it. Their focus was, as always, on Steven. Whether it was his latest school project or some minor accomplishment, he was their world, and I was just living in it. As my 18th birthday approached, I knew it was now or never. I had to make my move as soon as I was legally an adult. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. I had the plan all mapped out in my head. I'd pack up my things, say my goodbyes, or maybe not, and walk out that door into a new life. I didn't have a lot to take with me, which was both sad and a bit of a relief. A couple of bags of clothes, some personal items, and my laptop. That was it. That was my life in 2 duffel bags. It was almost laughable how little I had to show for my years at home, but it was enough. It had to be. About a week before D-Day, I started really packing. It wasn't like in the movies where the kid throws everything into a bag in a rage and storms out. I was methodical, making sure I had everything I needed, making sure I wouldn't have to come back for anything. I double-checked my stash of money, counted it 3 times, and tucked it into a hidden compartment in my bag. The night before my birthday, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over the plan in my head for the 100th time. Move out, go to college, get a degree, start a real life. It sounded simple, but the weight of what I was about to do felt like a boulder on my chest. Morning came, and I pretended everything was normal. I went through the motions, ate breakfast, even laughed at one of Steven's dumb jokes. Inside, though, I was a mess of nerves. My hands shook as I poured my coffee, and I had to take deep breaths to calm myself down. The plan was to wait until everyone was out of the house, but fate, it seemed, had a different idea. My mom decided to work from home that day, and Steven had a half day at school. My window of opportunity was closing fast, and I knew it. I waited heart-pounding until my mom was on a long conference call. Then I grabbed my bags, which I'd hidden under my bed, and tiptoed down the stairs. Every step was a thunderous echo in my ears. Every creak of the floorboards, a shout. I made it to the front door, hand on the doorknob, when my mom walked out of her office. "Where are you going with those?" she asked, eyes narrowing. For a moment I considered lying, saying I was just taking out some old clothes for donation. But I was done lying, done pretending. "I'm moving out," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The look on her face was a mix of confusion and concern. "Moving out? Why? What's wrong?" "Everything's wrong," I replied. "I can't do it anymore. I can't live here feeling like a ghost in my own home." Mom was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Is this about Steven? Is this because we got him a car for his birthday?" It was so much more than that, but how could I explain years of neglect in a single conversation? "It's not just about the car," I said. "It's about every birthday, every Christmas, every single day feeling like I'm second best." We stood there at an impasse, neither of us sure what to say next. Finally, my mom stepped aside. "If that's what you think is best," she said quietly. I nodded, opened the door, and stepped out into the sunlight. It was the hardest and easiest thing I'd ever done. As I walked down the driveway, I didn't look back. I couldn't. I had to believe that there was something better ahead, something worth all this pain. And as I climbed into the cab of my friend's truck, who'd agreed to help me move, I felt a mix of fear and relief. I was free, finally, irrevocably free, and there was no going back. I had arranged for my friend's older brother Phil to pick me up. He was one of the few people I'd confided in about my plans. He understood why I needed to leave, and he supported me without question. His beat-up truck rolled up to our house just past 10 a.m., right on time. I dragged my bags out the front door, taking one last look around before I closed it behind me. Phil gave me a nod as I loaded my bags into the back of the truck. "You ready for this?" he asked, his expression serious. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The drive to my new apartment in the nearby city was quiet. I spent most of it looking out the window, watching the familiar landscape slowly give way to the new, unknown streets of my future home. It was a mix of suburban sprawl and urban clutter, a far cry from the neatly manicured lawns of my old neighborhood. The apartment was in a modest building, a bit run down, but it was mine. It was a tangible piece of my independence, something I had secured on my own. The rent was affordable thanks to a deal I'd worked out with a friend of a friend who owned the place. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with a tiny kitchen and a living room that you could cross in 3 strides, but it was a fresh start. Phil helped me unload my bags and carry them up to the 3rd floor. There was no elevator, and by the time we reached my apartment, I was out of breath but exhilarated. This was it, my new home. "Not bad, huh?" Phil said as he looked around the sparse room. "A little paint, some curtains, and it'll look pretty good." I nodded, my mind already racing with ideas on how to make the space my own. "Yeah, it's perfect." After Phil left, I spent the first few hours just unpacking and arranging things. I didn't have much, so it didn't take long. I set up my laptop on the small desk in the corner of the living room and hung a few posters on the walls. It was bare, but it was a beginning. That first night, I lay in bed in my new apartment, listening to the sounds of the city. Cars honked, people shouted, and somewhere nearby, a dog barked incessantly. It was noisy, so different from the quiet, oppressive atmosphere of my parents' house. Here, there was life, chaos, and it was invigorating. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I enrolled in the local college using the scholarship I had secured to cover most of the tuition. I found a part-time job at a nearby cafe, which gave me enough income to cover my living expenses and start building some savings again. College was a revelation. I was studying subjects I cared about, meeting people who were interested in the same things I was. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt, nights when I lay awake wondering if I had made the right decision. The break from my family was harder than I had anticipated. There were times I missed them, or rather, the idea of them. I missed what I had always hoped our family could be, not what it actually was. Those moments of weakness were tough, but I pushed through them. I had to. Going back wasn't an option. I knew that no matter how hard it got, it couldn't be worse than feeling invisible in my own home. As I settled into my new life, I began to feel more and more confident in my decision. I made friends, good friends who supported and encouraged me. I was doing well in my classes, and my professors were taking notice of my hard work. I had escaped. I had taken control of my life, and I was building something new, something that was all mine. And for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to what the future held. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. And I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength to face them. I was no longer the overlooked second son. I was my own person, and my life was finally my own. I blocked and deleted my mom and dad's numbers from my phone. They had no way to contact me, and I was finally free. But that wasn't the end of it. The best part came 5 years later. I'm still living in that cheap one-bedroom apartment and doing well in college. I'm about to graduate at the top of my class and have several job opportunities lined up. One day I got a call from an unknown number. I decided to answer it, and it was my mother. She was crying and wailing and said she'd been searching for me all this time. She had gotten my number from the friend who helped me move. After 5 years, I had kind of moved on, so I was more sympathetic with her. We didn't talk much on the phone, but agreed to meet in person. I refused to give them my address, so we met at my favorite pizza place. I had to travel back in my car, but I didn't want to alert them even to the name of my city. She brought my dad with her, and they asked me how I was doing, etc. Seeing as the conversation was just going in circles, I told them that I'm waiting for their apology. They both looked at me with a blank look and said, "Apology? Apology for what?" Then they proceeded to explain how I am the one who should apologize for leaving their house without notice. I didn't get angry this time and just kept listening. My mom explained how Steven had asked for a car for his 20th birthday, and they had bought it for him, but now they were in debt. So they basically contacted me just to ask me for money so they could spend it on that darn Steven again. Well, I had made a lot of contacts in college, and there was this one guy that could print counterfeit currency in mass numbers. I told my parents, I'll send them the money in cash, and they hugged me and said that I was doing the right thing. They insinuated that this would be considered my apology, and I just smiled in return. Next week, I sent them thousands of dollars, except the notes were fake. I did this because I had a premonition about what they would do with this money, and I was right. They gave it all to Steven, who decided it would be a great idea to take that money to a casino. While my parents didn't suffer any consequences, the casino had Steven arrested, and he was put in jail. I blocked my parents' number once again, and I'm currently enjoying a spa weekend with my beautiful girlfriend. Jail versus spa, it's pure bliss.